There comes a moment in life when your heart aches from the weight of lack, when your dreams seem too expensive, and your needs appear greater than your supply. Maybe you've worked hard, prayed long, and still wondered, why does increase feel so far from me? My friend, I want to remind you today, your Father never designed you to struggle endlessly. He did not call you to a life of scraping by, but to a life overflowing with His abundance. The blessing of the Lord, it is not just a phrase, not just a promise. It is a living force that takes you from emptiness to fullness, from debt to freedom, from lack to more than enough. You see, riches in God's eyes are not just silver and gold. They are peace, health, opportunities, and supernatural favor that money cannot buy. True prosperity begins when you trust that His blessing can open doors no man can shut, and shut doors no man can open. If you will dare to believe it, if you will dare to receive it, you will walk into a dimension where increase follows you, where opportunities chase you down, and where the hand of God lifts you higher than your efforts ever could. There is a truth that shakes the very core of human striving. The blessing of the Lord is greater than labor. So often we believe that everything in life depends on how hard we work, how long we toil, or how much effort we can muster. And while diligence is important, there is a limit to what human effort can achieve. You can work 3 jobs, spend sleepless nights, and still find yourself just scraping by. But when the blessing of God rests upon you, it takes the little you have and breathes life into it until it multiplies beyond imagination. The blessing is not the sweat of your brow, it is the hand of God adding increase where your labor ends. The farmer plants a seed, but he cannot command the rain, nor can he speak life into the soil. Yet when God blesses that seed, it grows, it multiplies, it becomes a harvest greater than the farmer's hands could ever produce. In the same way, your career, your business, your work, these are the seeds, but it is the blessing of the Lord that makes them prosper beyond your effort. The story comes to mind of a young man named Daniel who worked tirelessly to build a small shop in his town. He sold simple goods, and though he was faithful and diligent, years passed with very little profit. Many nights he cried in silence, wondering why his hands brought in so little when others seemed to flourish. But Daniel chose to do one thing differently. He prayed not for more strength to work harder, but for God's blessing upon the work of his hand. One morning, a customer came into his small shop and bought several items. That one customer returned the next day with friends, and then with more people. Within weeks, word spread about Daniel's store, and it became the most trusted place in town. What Daniel could not achieve in years of exhausting labor, the blessing of the Lord brought to him in weeks. His effort had not changed, but the hand of God had shifted the outcome. This story is a living reminder that while hard work is valuable, it is not ultimate. You can push and strain, but without the blessing, labor remains limited. The world teaches us that the more hours you invest, the more reward you gain. Yet many work tirelessly, and still their barns remain empty, while others who walk under God's favor see increase flowing like rivers. The difference is not in human strength, but in divine empowerment. The blessing takes your simple obedience and magnifies it into supernatural results. It is the unseen hand that draws opportunities, the whisper that moves hearts in your favor, the current that carries you further than your legs can walk. Without the blessing, labor is like rowing against the tide, tiring, draining, and unending. With the blessing, it is like setting your sails to catch the wind of heaven. Carries you faster and farther than effort alone ever could. Consider this. Labor may give you bread, but blessing gives you abundance. Labor may pay bills, but blessing cancels debts. Labor may build a house, but blessing fills it with peace, joy, and provision. There are doors that no resume can open, no effort can force, and no money can buy. But the blessing of the Lord swings them wide with ease. This is why you must not measure your life only by the hours you work or the sweat on your brow. Instead, measure your life by the measure of God's favor resting upon you. The blessing transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. What looks like a desert becomes a garden. What looks like failure becomes testimony. and what looks like small beginnings become great endings. And so let your heart rest today in this truth. Your success is not confined to the limits of your own labor. Your increase does not come from endless striving, but from the blessing that multiplies beyond calculation. Work with diligence, yes, but lean on the greater power that carries you into overflow. The story of Daniel is proof enough. His effort remained the same, but the blessing made the difference. In the same way, God's blessing is ready to breathe life into your labor, to turn little into much, and to transform your struggle into abundance. Do not despise your small efforts, for when His blessing rests upon them, they become seeds of an unstoppable harvest. Riches are often misunderstood, for the world measures them by bank accounts, possessions, and glittering treasures. Yet true riches reach far deeper than the surface of material wealth. What good is gold if your heart is empty? What value is a mansion if there is no peace within its walls? The blessing of the Lord redefines riches, lifting them beyond money into the realm of eternal treasures. Peace that money cannot buy, joy that circumstances cannot steal, health that wealth cannot purchase, and favor that opens doors beyond human reasoning. Riches are found in the smile of a child, in the comfort of a loving family, in the strength of good health, and in the grace to rise each day with hope burning in your heart. Money can buy luxuries, but it cannot buy contentment. Riches in God's kingdom are measured not by the size of your possessions, but by the depth of your fulfillment, the abundance of your peace, and the overflow of your joy. There was once a woman named Ruth who had very little in her possession. She lived in a small house with her 2 children, struggling each day to make ends meet. Her neighbors pitied her, for she had no wealth, no fine clothing, and no outward success. Yet Ruth carried within her a treasure that money could never purchase. Every night she would gather her children close, pray with them, and fill their little hearts with love and hope. Though her pantry was small, her home was filled with laughter and the warmth of God's presence. Years later, her children grew into strong, compassionate leaders who touched many lives with kindness and wisdom. Ruth never had much money, but she left an inheritance of faith, strength, and love that outlived any bank account. Her story is proof that true riches are not counted in dollars, but in the lives we touch and the legacy we leave. When we chase money alone, we discover how quickly it slips through our hands. But when we embrace the blessing of God, we find riches that remain unshaken, even in storms. Money can vanish with the fall of an economy, but the peace of God stands unbroken. Material things can be stolen, yet joy rooted in His presence cannot be taken. Think of a man who has millions in his account, but lies awake every night battling fear, stress, and loneliness. His money cannot buy him sleep. Yet another man with little in the way of possessions rests in peace because his heart is free, his mind is calm, and his spirit is anchored. Which of these is truly rich? The world may point to the first, but heaven counts the second, for in the kingdom of God riches are not measured by what you hold in your hand, but by what you carry in your heart. True riches extend to health, favor, and purpose. There are doors that money cannot open, but favor can swing wide. There are cures that medicine cannot find, but divine health can sustain. There are questions that wealth cannot answer, but purpose gives meaning beyond all riches. A blessed life is one where money is a tool, not the master, where wealth serves, but peace reigns, where possessions are enjoyed, but joy is never dependent on them. To have true riches is to walk in contentment, to rise each morning with hope, to rest each night with peace, and to live each day knowing that you are guided, favored, and provided for. These are the treasures the world overlooks, but heaven celebrates. For when riches flow from God's blessing, they cannot be stolen, corrupted, or diminished. They remain eternal and unshakable. So let your heart be anchored in this truth. Riches are more than money. They are health that sustains you, peace that steadies you, joy that strengthens you, and love that surrounds you. Ruth's story whispers to every weary soul. You may not have much in your hands, but if you have faith, love, and the blessing of God, you are already rich beyond measure. This richness flows not from a paycheck, but from the presence of the Lord. It fills the soul, strengthens the body, and directs the path. Money may pass from one hand to another, but the riches of peace, joy, and divine favor remain unshaken through every season of life. Faith is the key that unlocks the treasures of heaven and brings them into your life. Many people work hard, pray occasionally, and wait for circumstances to change, but nothing shifts until faith is engaged. Faith is not passive wishing. It is a bold trust that acts on God's promises as though they are already true. It is the confidence that when He said, "I will supply all your needs," He meant it with no hesitation. Financial breakthrough is not only about strategies, opportunities, or talents. It is about daring to believe in the one who owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. Faith calls what is unseen into reality. Faith speaks to the mountain of debt and commands it to move. Faith looks at an empty cupboard and declares, "Provision is on the way." Without faith, the blessing remains untapped. With faith, the floodgates of heaven swing wide. When you choose to stand in faith, your financial story is rewritten, not by chance, but by the power of God responding to your belief. There was a man named Samuel who had struggled for years under the weight of debt. He worked faithfully but could never seem to get ahead. Every paycheck was swallowed up before it could bring relief, and despair clouded his heart. One night, as he sat at his kitchen table with overdue bills spread before him, he wept and prayed. But this time, instead of asking in fear, he stood up, lifted his hands, and declared in faith, "My God supplies all my needs. I will not live in debt. I will see His provision." From that moment, Samuel began to act as though his breakthrough was certain. He sowed small seeds into others' lives, even when it seemed impossible. Weeks later, an unexpected promotion came at work, followed by opportunities he never imagined. Slowly but surely, his debts were cleared, and Samuel experienced freedom. His story teaches us that the shift came not when his circumstances changed, but when his faith ignited. Faith is not a feeling, it is a choice to believe beyond sight. Circumstances may scream lack, but faith whispers abundance. Fear says, "You will never make it," but faith declares, "God has already made a way." Financial breakthroughs are not birthed in worry, they are birthed in faithful words and actions. Think of the widow in Scripture who gave her last meal to the prophet. Her act of faith unlocked a supply that sustained her household through famine. The same principle lives today. When you move in faith, you position yourself for miracles. Faith may tell you to take a step into an opportunity that looks too big, to sow into someone else's need when your own seems overwhelming, or to speak life over your finances instead of repeating defeat. These steps may feel small, but they open the floodgates for heaven's resources to pour into your life. Faith activates what labor alone cannot achieve. You can plan, save, and invest wisely, all of which are important, but without faith you will always hit a wall of limitation. Faith tears down that wall. It goes beyond calculation and enters into multiplication. Faith says, "I will not only survive, I will thrive." It shifts your perspective from depending on your paycheck to depending on God's endless supply. There are countless testimonies of people who stepped into faith, gave when they had little, trusted when fear screamed, and saw breakthroughs that defied logic. This is not about reckless decisions, but about Spirit-led faith that hears the whisper of God and obeys it with courage. When faith is alive in your heart, even the smallest act of obedience can birth the largest harvest. So remember this truth. Faith activates financial breakthrough. Samuel's story reminds us that the turning point comes when you rise from begging prayers to bold declarations, when you stop letting fear dictate your life and start letting faith guide your steps. Faith is the currency of heaven. It is what moves the hand of God and releases provision into your life. You may feel surrounded by lack today, but if faith is alive in you, lack cannot hold you down. Faith will open doors, cancel debts, create opportunities, and position you for abundance. The blessing of the Lord is waiting, but it is faith that reaches out, takes hold, and pulls it into your reality. Beloved, what we have seen together is that The blessing of the Lord is not limited to the sweat of our brow, the figures in our bank accounts, or the hours we labor. It is a divine force that multiplies our efforts, carries us further than human strength, and fills our lives with peace, joy, health, and favor. We have been reminded that true riches cannot be measured by money alone, for the treasures of God go beyond silver and gold. They are found in the love of family, the strength of purpose, and the contentment of a heart anchored in Him. And above all, we know that faith is the key that unlocks the door to financial breakthrough. When faith rises in our hearts, it takes us from begging to believing, from fear to boldness, and from lack to abundance. The blessing is waiting to rest on the work of your hands, but it is faith that reaches out and pulls it into your reality. So walk boldly, believe fully, and trust deeply in the God who delights in your prosperity. Thank you for joining in this message today. May God bless you richly, abundantly, and beyond measure.